Ooh. I really need a new table right there. That thing's going to tip over. All these microphones are going to tip, and we're going to have a problem. Happy YDT, season 3 episode, whatever it is of a show. This week has been a wild week of maneuvering and the schedule on the wall. It doesn't seem to coincide with the actual schedule that ends up happening. It was really cool this last week having interviews with Lex 18 and 14 News, and next week there's interviews in Indiana and Illinois and getting the word out. I've been watching this. I've been on another history kick because of the latest series on socials of the haunted military forts and battlefields. I don't believe that you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And I think there's something really cool about knowing the history of, wars that have been fought, whether or not you believe in war or whatever, but people show up to fight in these battles because they believe in their country. They believe in the people that they're protecting and serving. And there's something beautiful there. But I got into the history of the tank. And last night it hit me. And there's some pretty interesting analogy there. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. This show, You'll Die Trying, has been for 3 seasons a show that's forever, always evolving, similar to us. Finds us in good seasons, good moments, good mindsets, and then it finds us in just all over the place. Maybe like now, but we continue to show up, and you do too, and that means a lot. And so know that this show is a show which pulls back the curtain and takes down the walls brick by brick to expose the true hearts of those caring for those you love most. And whether it's those that have gone before us because they've shown up to a battlefield, or whether it's me showing up week after week to put out this content that I believe in, even when it feels all over the place, or whether it's you getting up and going to work even though you don't necessarily want to, or whatever version of showing up it is, it means a lot. And so without further ado, let's talk about tanks. Before we talk about tanks, Theo Vaughn, if you haven't listened to his podcast or watched his podcast on YouTube, his channel, I encourage you to do that. His abilities to casually just converse with, it's nothing grand. There's nothing grandiose, if that's the right word, that he tries to put on front-wise. I mean, he's a comedian, he's a goofball. And speaking of, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to me over on YouTube, Nathan Morris Music, because we released this video for this podcast. And he has this incredible ability to just sit with people. And as of late, there's an episode a few months ago where the fighter, I can't think of his first name, his last name is Strickland. Huge guy, MMA fighter, tons of wins, tons of notable wins, a great career. He's a tough dude. And he grew up in this tumultuous home. And they were talking about something very not related to heaviness and weight. And Strickland goes to talk about his upbringing and his turmoil and his father and his mother and the abuse that he witnessed. And this grown man begins to weep. And the podcast, you can hear it, but on Theo's YouTube channel, you can watch this podcast. And the most beautiful thing happens. Theo's a goof. Theo, if you've seen his stand-up comedy or his Netflix specials or whatever, like he says some very, very silly, he's funny in his delivery to me. He's also kind and compassionate, and he sees the world with perspective. He's set. Strickland, on a few occasions, is a wide shot. And Theo's to the left, and Strickland's on the right, and he's like, I'm sorry. And Theo, his body language doesn't tense. He doesn't feel this need to fill a gap with unnecessary commentary that people don't want to hear in a moment of sadness, weakness, heaviness. He sits there and he says, we can just sit here if you want. He permits Strickland to feel how he feels in that moment. It was beautiful. It was the perfect example of, for me, just being a decent human. Because Strickland was probably embarrassed for a moment. And even later, at the end of this moment of emotional turmoil, he says, I don't care. And I think it was large in part because of how Theo responded, by just being present. And I talk about that all the time. Go to the visitation. You don't have to say anything. You could just be. The thing that people want to do when things get heavy, tough, uncomfortable, right? One, if it becomes uncomfortable, you're making it about yourself. If you're going through this tumultuous situation or experiencing someone having these moments, the first and worst thing to do or not do is feeling as if you have to say something to fix it. Because there's nothing you can do to go back in time and to take away the hurt and pain and abuse, physical and emotional and mental and sexual abuse that Strickland experienced. You can't say anything to say, well, what if you go to the therapist? I think that people would have done that by now. If say anything, say, I'll be right here. I'll just be right here. And sit with it, sit in the muck, sit in the dirt. That's what people appreciate. And it might not be the most comfortable thing, but in time, I don't know that it'll ever not be or be comfortable or not comfortable. I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to say, but it was just such a decent thing to witness. And I encourage you to check that out. And what does that have to do with anything? I think it just has to do with me talking about the season of the podcast evolving and how it's been different things, but always been the hope and goal to pull back this proverbial, this curtain that, whether it's in the funeral profession or the curtain that is my life or what's happening in my journey, but also just sitting with and being a decent human being. That just resonated for me, and I watched it. I was really moved. By it. And I know I'm supposed to be talking about tanks, but I want to encourage you all, because that is a beautiful moment in a podcast. It just to see human beings being there for one another without having to do anything in particular, but just community. And I talk about community all the time. We long for it. We need it. It's a part of what makes us human. So I just wanted to share that. And back to Netflix. Theo Vaughn's on Netflix, but the documentary that I watched is just the history of the tanks. And they started and they were wonky and terrible and awful. And it was then finally like this, during World War I, this rush to get the tank and to protect the troops. And then they forgot about and overlooked things. And you had crossfire and like, oh, let's armor the front, but not the sides. So you've got just these dead in the water tanks because the soldiers inside are dead because the people are shooting from the sides. And then you talk about like when they get over the trenches, right? Like then they get hung up. It's like you prepare yourself. Like the third version of the tank is great until the trench gets wider and then they're stuck. And the whole time I was watching it and learning, I was thinking about like versions of ourselves. It's so weird. It feels like I'm just constantly like philosophizing. I just feel I'm in this constant season of growth, and that's a good thing to be, I think. but I was comparing in my mind. I was like, okay, so this like third or fourth generation of this tank, it conquered all those trenches, but now it's stuck up in this one, and here I am in a season of similar trenches. It's like you level up and you feel like the first knee jerk is when you hit another obstacle. It's like you feel like you're regressing, but you're not regressing. And that's really what this whole build up with the tank thing was. That might have been a dumb thing, but I tend to think that way when I am watching, listening to content. I tend to relate things oftentimes like, that's kind of similar to this that's going on in my world. And it goes back to like the Stoic way. I talk about it all the time. And the Stoic way of thinking is the obstacle is the way, things don't happen to you, they happen. And what you do with them, it's how you choose to respond, determines, the trajectory of the season or of life, etc. And Marcus Aurelius, you might have seen the movie Gladiator. Nonetheless, I listened to this podcast from Ryan Holiday, but the Stoic way of thinking is a beautiful way of thinking, because the obstacle is the way. And I've been in a trench. The trench that I feel that I'm in is like I've gotten from one side and I've fallen into this trench, and I'm working my way out to get to the other side, but I don't know. I feel like I'm spinning my tires. I don't know if you ever felt like that. I'm sure you have. I mean, it's maybe a common feeling, and I have to remind myself that the obstacle is the way, because when you come out, and obviously you come out, you just need to prepare yourself for the next trench. So you just got to fortify your tank, I guess. It's such maybe stupid analogies. I don't know. I just am. It's just a hard reset. You start over sometimes. Life is about just pressing. Here we go. We're gonna start anew. It reminds me of when my grandmom used to like take her recorded figure skating events on VHS, and she'd rewind them and she'd record over them because she loves me so much, like magic specials, because I love magic. It's like I just have to start the tape over and record again. And we all have those moments. It's funny how man plans and God smiles. It really is. I don't know if you heard the podcast from last week where I did the Bonus Noise exclusive. Everyone got to hear it. If you have not subscribed to Bonus Noise, it is $4.99 a month to exclusive subscriber-only episodes where I kind of pull back the curtain behind the curtain, really, of what's going on personally. Like we'll be talking about, what's happening with the upcoming shows and the rehearsals that are happening. So it's in the show notes there. You can I don't even know how to talk sometimes. You can subscribe for $5.99. Nope, that's not right. You can subscribe for $4.99 a month. I don't know why I always say $5.99. Yeah. There's a lot going on. The last week's episode, just wanted to share this house that I'm selling and just kind of reclaimed it. I am proud to have gone back in and found the good there, my childhood home. And if you haven't heard that episode, I still have it available there. It's selling my childhood home. And if you want to buy a childhood home of mine, then you most certainly can. Just book a showing with my agent. There you go. If you got a trench in front of you, if you're in the trench, I promise you, you gotta find the goodness. And if you speak something negative into the space, into this world, it changes you, and you start growing weeds. So don't say it. Don't think it. Think positive only. Sounds like a fourth grade teacher, but it's true. It's true. We've had 150,000 streams of last time. It's 21 at Billboard. Thank you for sharing the single. Thank you for streaming it. Be sure to share it with a friend. Let's blow the internet up with it. I use it as a sound in a Instagram or TikTok. And speaking of, follow me on all the socials. It's blowing up. TikTok over 600,000 followers, thank you for meeting me here. I send all the love right back to you. Got a show April 18th in New York City at Somewhere Nowhere. It's New York City. You're welcome. I'll keep doing that for forever. And we're finalizing a date that I'm really excited for those of you who live in the Midwest and or in and around Kentucky. I'll be announcing that very, very soon. And be sure to visit nathanmorrismusic.com/tour for all those updates. You've been updated and you've heard me mumble and bumble, and I'm grateful for you. I really am. Be sure to hit the review button wherever you listen and give me 5 stars. Leave a review here on the podcast. It really does support what we're doing, because apparently you've got algorithms, and algorithms, when they like this podcast, they push it out somewhere else. So thank you for that. You're loved far more than you could know. This is You'll Die Trying. This is a show which I promise you I will always show up and pull back this curtain, and I will always be as authentic as I possibly can, and I will strive for my best, and I ask for you to do the same. You're loved. Go do something kind for someone. New merch in the store. Grab you some, 20% off. Use the code in the show notes. All right. There's your homework. See ya.